chaos and contentment, how you look at things. Hello, everyone. My name is Tessa. Welcome to the Futurist Mindset. I'm going to introduce your host, Reagan Rodriguez. Reagan is a futurist that teaches stratosphere wealthy legacy families how to become impact investors. And you have quite a bit of information for us today.
Do. Yeah,
So,
I'm looking at stuff I've got. Go ahead. I'll let you do the intro. Go ahead.
yeah, well, I'm just, I'm looking forward to this topic, but we might have this be a two-part series. So I'm just telling you now that we're very likely going to have so much that we're going to split it into two, but we're glad you're here. And Regan, you want to go ahead and talk to us about chaos and contentment?
I do. And as I was mentioning to Tessa that I said I was looking at amount of notes I have, and then about 2-3 hours ago, I was writing some things on a receipt, and I thought I've got some other ideas I want to go over. So most of what I'm going to say is just kind of from memory, or me just kind of talking from the heart. But I do have a few topics I want to go over. So if we don't finish everything, that's okay. What I don't want to do is have this go over 30 minutes, because a lot of the information that I'm going to have is I want you to kind of think on it. So it may require you to kind of put a pause, and then we'll go back to next week. So
Beautiful.
Yeah. So as Tessa mentioned, I want to talk about chaos and contentment. Everybody that I run into talks about stress, about anxiety, how things have changed, how things are, and how our lives are impacted on all those changes. And the issue becomes, how do we survive, right? How do we manage all of this? Whether it's what's going on, I'm going to pick on the city where I live, whether we're talking about Miami-Dade County or what's going on around the world, right? And when you look at all those factors that come into play, some of the factors are very basic, some are very complex. My recommendation is to start with the very basics. Just look at, we're going to look at Miami-Dade County. Let's start right here at home. There are two factors that have been shown to impact our quality of life. Tessa, do you have an idea of what they are? Can you give me a guess?
I don't know. I mean, the income, I don't know.
Okay. So some people might say finances, a lot of that was on the list, but it was further down on the list. So
Really?
The two factors that impact our quality of life are density and length of extent of your daily commute. So those are the two factors, density, and the length of extent for your daily commute. They impact your perceived quality of life. And as you look around in Miami, we've got density. It's not this anymore. It's this way. The buildings are going up, and there's all kinds of stressors that individuals encounter, right? So let me tell you something about myself to give you some context as to where I'm coming from. I have been very fortunate in my career where I've had the opportunity to work with, to interact with people from all walks of life in all parts of the world. I've had a chance to work with individuals who are homeless, and also with individuals who have more money than they could ever spend if they live 5 lifetimes. I work with hedge fund owners, a lot of mine owners, as in owners of mines, gold mines, diamond mines. I've also worked with a lot of mistresses of hedge fund managers. Quite a bit of one of my investors is a producer, movie producer, and yes, I've actually worked with a mistress of one of my producer investors, and who's wanted some kind of wise counsel. So a variety of individuals. I had an opportunity before I move on, let me kind of get to the next point. Let this sink in for all of you, because some people wonder, what is it like to be me, right? I have a friend that refers to me as saying, you're basically like the butler to the ultra wealthy. That's right. I am. I'm paid to protect their privacy and find humanitarian projects to invest in that can do impact to our planet. And let me tell you what I've learned. What I've learned is that the richest person in the world is not the one who has the most, but it's the one who needs the least. I had an opportunity to meet someone that was exonerated after 31 years on death row. And he came out of, he was not angry. He said he couldn't afford to be angry and survived. He had thanked the lawyers, his family, all the people who had been supportive, and the people who had stuck by him for 31 years. And he said to me, from this point on, I've got to go forward and use the best of my ability with the time that I have left. Think about that, right, Tessa? I think just to myself, how do you come out like that, right? How do you experience that and then come out with that kind of frame of reference that he has, right? Because think about this: we look on TV and I see people fighting over a parking spot. And I'm thinking, what's going on, right? How is it that one person spends 31 years on death row, comes out and says to me, Reagan, I've got to move forward, and then a person over here is fighting over a parking space? I like to learn from everyone. And I like to find something new and exciting every day in life. And one thing that stands out is the whole idea of thought. That people have different thought processes by which they focus on, by which they process information. I know that oftentimes what happens, it's, we don't give that we don't give that a great deal of attention, is what I'm wanting to say. The whole idea of thought, and not just the thought content, but the process of thought. And what I mean by that is when we talk about the content of thought, that's what we all have. I have to be here today. I have to somewhere else tomorrow. I have another thing after tomorrow. I have to meet such and such person and such time. But we know very little bit about the process of kind of our thought and what I want to talk about is the key to our survival. I believe that's the key to how we continue to manage all of the quote unquote stuff, right? That's a psychological term I use a lot, Tessa, stuff that's going on. Because we have to be able to manage what is taking place. We have to be able to manage all the different kinds of things that we have. So all of the different things I just said. Again, I think we're going to say that's my pop psychology term, things. So look, guys, my hope for all of you is that after today, you maybe look at things in a slightly different way than you would have otherwise. When I think about this whole process of thought, I'm not interested in being happy. I'm not really interested in joy. I want to be content. Happiness and joy, I call them, it's like my checklist entities. In other words, we tend to be happy when we can check off different things. I've got enough money. I got the car. I got the house. You can go on and on. But the minute one of those checklists no longer works, then what, right? Then the happiness is gone. Happiness and joy, what I've noticed, can be fleeting. And if we don't understand we need to understand what happens. Because if not, then we're going to be destroyed when we don't have the money. Because all of those things that are kind of external to us, we can lose. Money can be taken away. Cars can be lost. Houses can be a season. But contentment, whether it's a state of plenty or whether it's a state of want, it's contentment. That's how it differs from happiness. I mean, hey, we want those things. Bring them on. If available, bring it on. We'll take it. But contentment is what continues. Happiness and joy are what? They're going to be short-lived. It's just going to come and go. When we talk about contentment, we're talking about something that's there. And when I think of contentment, I think of Nelson Mandela, from South Africa. How do you stay jailed in isolation for over 20 years? How does one survive that? You survive it with your thoughts. If you don't have the thought process in place, you'll go bonkers and you can't function. But if you manage your thoughts, then you're able to then kind of manage yourself. And if you manage yourself, then you manage all the things that are going on around you, in spite of all that turmoil, right? In other words, you're able to manage. What's process? That's something else I want to go over. We all as individuals engage in a process that we aren't necessarily aware of because it occurs with great frequency. And people don't think about it that much. But I want to keep in mind in every situation that you experience, hate, love, rage, whatever, every emotion that you experience is preceded by authority. Last Saturday evening, it was late and this kind of call came in and I thought, oh, no, I don't want to. But then I heard this voice inside of me say, your life is not your own, right? So I answered it, and it was someone I kind of am helping mentor, and he is wanting to learn more about investing, and he's a well-known, I can't say his name, he's a well-known kind of actor, and his wife had actually called. And what happens is sometimes the wife will call and she'll say, call Reagan because it seems his voice is calming. So what she means by that is they begin yelling at each other and then they call me and place me on the speaker.
Oh.
And it's like, yeah. And it's like I'm on command and they say, talk, just talk. Well, that's not me helping. And I can't be available each time they get in a fight. So last week it got kind of heated. He decided to go for a walk. And I said 2 words to him. I said, what happened? And he said, she pushed my buttons. Well, he used stronger language than that. Okay. But in so many words, she pushed my buttons and I got upset. And I said, no, that's not what happened. She may have done something or said something, but before anything, you did think something. The problem is it happens very quickly because we do it in all circumstances, right? It happens very quick. And so what happened basically was she may have said something, then you thought something, and then your thought fueled your emotion. When that happened, then you became enraged. You became angry. And then your behavior was that you yelled or made her feel unsafe or whatever. But that's how we act. That happens to all of us. But it happens so quickly that most individuals will say something happened and then we don't know why. And I started to feel bad, started to feel sad, or fill in the blank. And I said, no, you didn't. Something happened. You thought something. That's why when you learn to manage yourself, when you're confronted with something, it's not always what I'm going to do. Most of the time it should be, what am I going to think? Because what I think is going to influence what follows, i.e. my emotions, and my emotions then will subsequently be my behavior. And that's what we have to understand, because that is what fuels how we operate and how we function. Yeah. Also, it's important to keep in mind how many of us here is stress, right? I was coming from, might have been about 2 months ago, the last Art Basel here in Miami. I spent about an hour and 10 minutes, I think, going from just what seemed like a quarter of a mile over on Miami Beach, going from one location to the other. Now, we have these notions that we can describe that stress us out or that cause us stress. I want you to think about this a little differently. I think our analysis of stress begins at a high level. If we're talking about stress, we need to start at a lower level. And when I say a lower level, what I'm talking about is the origin of the source of all stress is not the object. The source of all stress is the loss of control. So traffic, Tessa, bothers us and stresses out because we can't control it. That's the source of the stress. Think about that. It's not the boss that's causing you stress. Getting rid of the boss may not help because they'll just put somebody else there and it'll be the same thing over again. You have to understand the source of all stress is a loss of control. When you sense that you no longer then have that control, whatever it is, it's going to stress you out. So the question then becomes, how do I manage this? What can I do? There are some things you can do, and there are some things you can't do. How are we doing on time? I'm looking here. I still have
5 minutes. Yeah.
5 minutes till about 20 minutes is what you're saying.
Yes.
Got it. Let me say this then. Reality is dangerous and a frightening place for those who choose to stay in touch with it. The idea of the serenity prayer is that there's some things you can't change. There are some things you can change somewhat. And you have to know the difference between the two. So when we talk about these things that impact us based on our loss of control, we've got to understand that in order to move forward, and in order to not be immobilized by whatever the particular situation happens to be, that then we have to do something to take charge or to change that situation. Sometimes there's things you can do. For example, I'll tell you something I do. I've stopped driving. I have learned, at least in my life, it gets too much. It gets too much. When you drive, you have to concentrate. And then if you're like me, get behind the wheel, then you begin focusing on other things and you lose your concentration on the driving. So for example, why would anyone want to drive to the airport? It's just Uber, really. So you want to gain as much control over things as you are able to manage. And in doing so, you manage yourself. What can I control? Let me look at the situation. Let me look at this incident. Let me look at this event. And let me see if there's something that I can do to restore the balance of control, because that's where the stress is coming from, regardless of what it is. And it is a loss of control. And there's some things that we can change. And as I mentioned earlier, there's some things we can't change. Now, it's important to keep in mind how we handle what's going on around us, because it is influenced by a lot of assumptions that we make. I'm always, Tessa, mildly amused by all the things that are floating around in our environment that we believe that we have accepted as fact, but there are no basis. In fact, we just kind of accepted them. For example, physical fitness. Going to the gym doesn't mean you're going to live longer. There's a difference between health and physical fitness. Physical fitness means that you're able to engage in a range of motion involving physical activity within a certain amount of time, right? And then health is the absence of disease. So if you have to choose one or the other, what would you take? Tessa, we're going to take health.
I would take the absence of disease personally.
That's right. Yeah. Because if it were physical fitness, the oldest living people would be our professional athletes. Mm-hmm. It doesn't really work that way. The absence of disease is what really determines it in the long run. That's why it's important that when you're making the right choices in your life, I can't even say this without smiling, you choose the right parents. Okay? You want to make sure you've got the right gene pool. Some of us didn't make the right choices when you chose your parents.
Oh man, I didn't have much say in that choice now, did I?
Yeah, I know. That was my way of joking. So
no, I love it. I love it. It's a good point though,
Why did I bring that up? Because as I mentioned earlier, there are certain things in life that we really cannot change. Another thing, collagen, Botox, plastic surgery, that's temporary. We all know that. Go ahead. What were you going to say, Tessa? Am I already up almost at 20 minutes?
You are. You're right there.
Then you know what? We'll just kind of close with this. That I will just say that, see if there was something else I wanted to go. Here's what I'll close with, again, as I mentioned before, the richest person in the world is not the one who has the most, but it's the one who needs the least.
I was going to make you come back to that point, actually. I wanted you to say that again for us because I think that is so impactful.
Yeah, because, and this is how I'll really close. That was that my hope for all of you is that after today, you maybe think about things in a slightly different way than what you've thought otherwise.
It's beautiful.
Mm-hmm.
Perfect. Because I love that you went back over control being the thing that we are actually seeking in stressful situations. And just being able to focus on that and not the person or the situation as much as, where did I lose control in this situation and how can I get it back? That was just very impactful. I wrote that one down as well.
And you understand what I mean. I don't mean the kind of
Yes.
control where it's OCD kind of thing, right?
No,
I'm
it's
just
just this
saying
is
little things
yes.
like if I say, gosh, there's so much traffic here and I don't drive that often, and it's just then eliminate that. That's kind of what I meant.
100%. No, I think it's perfect. And that might be in a work situation. I can see it applying to what kinds of things we typically run into. So that was very helpful. Thank you. And I look forward to hearing more on this topic too. I know you have lots of great information for us.
I
And if
did.
you guys
I started looking and I thought, oh gosh, I think I have about 5, 6 other points, maybe some stories to share as well. I got a good story to share on another one on thought, but we'll get into that next week.
Yes. And so if you guys, if you haven't hit the bell to get notifications when we go live, make sure you do that. We're here on Fridays at noon Eastern time, and we'd love for you to watch the whole series. Plus, we have lots of good shows that you should definitely go back and binge watch for sure. Reagan has a very peaceful sounding voice, and I feel like he gives us so much information each one of these. So thank you very much, Reagan. And we'll see you next week for more on this topic.